Territories Wild with Tom Miranda is presented by Matthews. Catch us if you can. Often referred to as the Wilderness City, Whitehorse, Yukon is nestled on the banks of the Yukon River. Surrounded by mountains and pristine lakes, this gorgeous town is the largest city in northern Canada and was named after the Whitehorse Rapids, which resemble the manes of white horses.
It's 3,300 miles from Tampa, Florida to Whitehorse, Yukon, and there's no real easy way to get there. I mean, Florida is in the southeastern part of the continent, and Whitehorse, Yukon is in the northwest part of the continent, so it's a long trip up there. But it's worth the time and effort to get there, because when you get up there, that's gold country.
For a hunter traveling to the Yukon, Whitehorse is a destination with all the comforts of home. A staging point for hunters and miners to finalize their plans and check their gear before heading into the remote, untouched regions of wilderness.
You think about the Yukon, you think about the Yukon Territories, the minor 49ers. You never know when you're on the edge of a lake or you're walking down a creek bed in the Yukon whether you might find yourself a gold nugget. And there's great hunting up there. There's great grizzly hunting, great sheep hunting, phenomenal moose hunting. Our de Havilland Beaver just landed. We're going to throw our gear on there. About a 25-minute float plane ride to a small lake where we're going to portage across to the Pelly River. The Pelly's a large river, but it's not large enough for us to land the plane. We've got a wall-tet camp set up there in some of the best moose habitat in the Yukon.
The Yukon's Pelly River rises in glaciers on the western slopes of the Selwyn Mountains. Originating in the Northwest Territories, the Pelly flows south and west for over 300 miles, receiving many small tributaries along the way, and eventually merging with the Great Yukon River.
I booked my moose hunt with Sean Raymond at Yukon Big Game Outfitters, but he had recently purchased this new area. It's one of the largest in Canada, so real good virgin country for hunting the animals of the Yukon. My strategy and thought was that we would hunt a river because we could use the boat and we could cover more ground. And a lot of time in these big, huge concessions, you can't walk or ride a horse far enough to get to where the animals are. But in a boat, you can cover miles and miles. When you start thinking about going on a hunt in the Yukon, going into true wilderness, these are the memories that come back to me. When I was in my early 20s, I built a log cabin in the northern peninsula of Michigan, and I remember cutting the logs and draw shaving the logs and building that cabin. The beaver that are swimming down the streams and building their dams, and blue skies and the snow-capped mountains, and to me this is wilderness. The opportunities to do these types of hunts come along very few. Everywhere you look, in every direction, whether it's a panorama of mountains or it's just a small bird on a stump, everything there seems to be beautiful.
Moose hunting is not for the faint of heart. Hunters often spend hours, if not days, hiking or cruising upriver, then stopping, glassing, and calling. Patience is a virtue in moose hunting, as often the rut is quiet and no response is heard. With an area including over 186,000 square miles, the entire Yukon Territory has a population of just over 33,000 people, which is only 1% of Canada's entire population. Matthews Territories Wild with Tom Miranda is presented by Cuddyback Digital. Don't get blanked, get a Cuddyback. Bill Jordan's Realtree, family, friends, and the outdoors. Nikon, the trusted name in optics. Rage, leading the evolution in lethal technology. Superslam.org, home of the amazing Super Slam Big Game Raffle. And by Matthews, catch us if you can. Adventure bow hunter Tom Miranda is hunting moose along the Yukon's Pelly River. Working the area for several days has produced only a few tracks and no moose. But after persisting, the hunters have finally received a response.
He wasn't quite what we were looking for. He's just a little small. He's probably 44, 45 inches wide. He's a little weak on one front. He's not what we came here to shoot. There he goes right there. He's across the river. When you've got a bull coming into range and you see branches moving, you think it could be King Kong, and then you see the moose's antlers and it's not quite the moose that you're thinking that you want to shoot. There's this little fight that goes within your head, you know, should I shoot, shouldn't I shoot? Do I have a shot, don't I have a shot? Will it be a better day tomorrow? Will I never see anything tomorrow? It's difficult to make the call sometimes, and it's easy to make a mistake on the call, meaning that you decide not to shoot and that's the only one you ever see and you go home empty. I remember my Alaskan moose hunt where we finally got on a bull. He was in the river. I was able to get closer, go to full draw as he was going away from me, and I decided that the angle was wrong. It was a little bit too far. I decided not to take the shot, and I'll never forget that night back at camp. It's too far. 70 plus, it's too far. I'm having a little bit of bow hunter's remorse. That big bull out in the river was 75 yards. I had a 60-yard pin on my bow. I was at full draw, I had the pin on him, but I just thought it was too far and I let down. I couldn't hardly sleep any last night. It's our second day here and we got snow last night up on the mountain, which is a good sign. That means the temperature's dropping. You can see what we're up against. This is the willow thickets that are along the river, and you can see how thick they are. And they're just covered with golden leaves. We need a cold snap. We need to get these leaves off so we can see back in here. You're not gonna have a shot in these willows, so we're gonna have to try to call the moose out to the river. That means we need to be in the rut and we need these moose actively calling. When you go to the Yukon, you've just got to be prepared for the mental aspects of it. For me, That's a lot of it. You know, when you go to bed at night and there's rain on the roof of the tent, that's great and you fall asleep right away. But when you wake up in the morning and there's rain on the roof, it puts you in a totally different place. You know, you've got foggy binoculars, you're not seeing any game because the game itself is hiding under a tree somewhere. It doesn't want to get wet either.
Although the moose rut typically starts in early September, often the weather affects its intensity. With a warmer than normal fall, big bulls have remained on the mountaintops, moving very little. This lethargic attitude will end once a freeze settles over the area and making the air crisp for moose to move down to estrus cows in the river valley.
We got a cool frosty morning. Sun's just getting up a little bit. I don't know, it's probably 25 degrees. I'm gonna try to hit it hard all day. Perfect moose calm weather. Using the boat on the river is great because you're covering a lot of country. You can run 2-3 miles up the river, slow down, and then call, listen, look, and then motor up some more and cover a lot of ground. But if you have motor problems, if you break that propulsion unit, especially when you're 12, 15 miles upriver, you've got major issues. It's just one quick thud, and that's it, all quiet. It stops your hunt.
In 1910, 4 bull moose and 6 cows were introduced into Fiordland, New Zealand. Low numbers of sightings since 1952 have led to some presumption of a species introduction failure. However, DNA tests show that hair collected in 2002 was from a moose. Adventure bow hunter Tom Miranda is hunting moose along the Pelly River in Canada's Yukon Territory. After several days of scouting and hunting the Wilderness River with little luck and no moose, the team has encountered an even bigger problem.
Well, for every positive, there's a negative. Positive about using a boat like this with a motor like that is that you can get up into some areas where generally you couldn't get into. But the negative is when you break down, you're pretty much stranded. And that's what we're at right now. We've got some rocks up in there to the point where the engine's not going to work anymore. So we've got to kind of pull that bottom unit off and try to get it cleaned out. And hopefully that's the problem. Hopefully there's nothing broken in there. Just really puts a lump in your throat because you don't know if that's the end of motorized propulsion for the entire rest of the hunt or if it's something that can be fixed. It's nerve-wracking, especially when it's going to take you all day, if not spending at least one night out just to get back to camp. Back in business. I think on a wilderness hunt, it's easy to get carried away with the beauty of it all. But the reality of it is it can be dangerous out there, and you have to kind of stay focused. You have to kind of keep your wits about you. You may be thinking about a moose, and all of a sudden there's a bear and a sow and 2 cubs at 10 feet. Big boar grizzly tracks working right through here, fresh. And look at the size of this track right here. You can see that pad? It's a good 7 inches wide. That could be an 8-foot bear working this river. It's just, it's a cool feeling to be in the boat, just drifting down, calling, looking. I mean, every bend in the river's like Christmas. You don't know what you're gonna get. When you go on a trip to the Yukon, It's a different type of hunt when you're using binoculars to spot a trophy animal and then make a plan to go after the animal than it is to try to determine the travel patterns and movements of an animal like you'd use a trail camera for. I really enjoy using trail cameras specifically on whitetails, but when you start doing these moose hunts and these bear hunts and some of these hunts that are typically 100% spot and stalk, you're not going to have that opportunity, and you've got to find your trophy animal and go after him, or you've got to get lucky and call him in. This morning. We're not far from camp. We've already got moose action on the river. That's a good thing. You never know if there might be a big bull in the willows behind her. So we're just going to watch for a little bit.
To date, the largest Alaskan Yukon moose on record was taken in 2013 by Hennessy Naif on a self-guided hunt and scored a whopping 263 2/8 total inches Boone and Crockett. Matthews Territories Wild with Tom Miranda is presented by Pope and Young Club for the good of bow hunting. Linton Outdoors, your one-stop shop for quality gear including First Flight camouflage, Block Target, history's toughest target, Cornholer from Buck Bomb. Funny name, serious results. Ape Arrow Tails, shoot flatter, deeper, and more accurate. Powered by New Fletch. And by Matthews, catch us if you can. After days of hunting and few encounters, adventure bow hunter Tom Miranda has finally heard the grunt of a mature bull lumbering through the alders.
Anytime you go on a hunt, you have to play the cards you're dealt. If the rut's not in, the rut's not in. If it rains, it rains. You know, if it's windy, it's windy. And on this particular hunt, the cards we were dealt was that the rut hadn't really kicked in yet. It was a little warmer than normal. It wasn't a shooter, probably 45 incher. I didn't have real big fronts, but it was exciting. And I had him at 30 yards. Would have been kind of a tight shot in there, but I think I could have made the shot if I needed to, if it was a big one. We really were at wit's end trying to figure out how we were going to make a hunt happen that really didn't want to happen. Well, we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to use a decoy. We've heard a couple of bulls grunt in the woods, but they grunt once or twice and they don't come in. I'm thinking, at least I'm thinking, that maybe these bulls are coming to the trees and they're hearing a cow, but they're not seeing anything. So if they'll see the decoy and hear the cow calls, maybe we can get a big bull to come in. So we're going to give it a try. Good bull, he's a good bull, but he's not a huge bull. the way it goes sometimes, you know. We've still got a couple more hours before dark, but I'm a realist when it comes to shooting a 65 or 70-inch bull with 2 hours left in the hunt, especially as hard as a hunt as it's been. It's been a difficult hunt. We've had some bulls in range. I've had my bow at full draw. I could have tagged out on a moose, a couple of them, but you know, sometimes when you're a bow hunter, you set your standards high and you want to stick with that, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going to get over to the boat. We're going to keep working at it till you can't work anymore, and then we'll go home and we'll come back and we'll do it again. I'm a bow hunter. I live to bow hunt, and at the end of the day, I'm used to going home with nothing. I don't feel bad about it because I know I gave 100%. If you get up early and you stay late and you work, eventually good things will happen. And that's why you go back. This is the learning ground for me. This is just another piece of the puzzle.